I'm being very mutative today. I'm waiting for the inspiration. If it doesn't come, we just have to wait, okay? We're in the space between the pulse right now. Well, you think I'm kidding? No. You know, we've got the Sun and Venus both in the 51st gate today. And I thought coming in this morning, I might kill somebody today, you know? I mean... The only thing that saves me is that Neptune has gone into the 13.5, so I'm going to play Savior today.
Maybe save someone by killing them.
Yes, I think so. I think that's really the story. The interesting thing for me in all of this is that when I was thinking about what courses that I was going to do at this year's event, and I thought that it was time for me to do the formats, and I mentioned I had been doing the channels on the radio, and I realized it's been a long time. I wanted to be able to get across, particularly in looking at the collective formats, I wanted to be able to bring the dimension of transcendent consciousness, the concept of transcendent consciousness, and place that where it rightfully belongs, which is in the collective process. The collective, because of the fact that we live as not self, the collective is the most dangerous of forces in the world. You know, the not self tribe still lives within very, very confined rituals of connection and support. But the whole thing about the collective is that the collective operates out of majority. And when you're dealing with the not-self, collective authority is something that can create enormous problems for those who are left on the outside or those who didn't vote the right way. It's one of the things about being a freak. For me, it's always so clear that the collective being and the tribal being, that they're planetary necessities. That doesn't mean I have to like it, but they're planetary necessities. And as a freak, you spend most of your life, trying to find acceptance for being a freak. Most people who are mutative never truly mutate and never bring real mutation into the world. It's not such an easy piece of business. And the fact that you have a mutative potential only means that you have a mutative potential. It doesn't mean you have a mutative destiny, a mutative karma. It doesn't mean any of those things. I know from my many years of commenting on channels and circuitry that I have continuously nailed the collective to the wall. I do enjoy doing that, you know. There's nothing I like better than the rare opportunity I have to kick an 1858 instead of being kicked by them. You know, so it's very nice to just sort of get that out there. What I'm trying to lead up to is that the transcendent nature in the collective is very, very different than what we're about to look at today. And that the only thing that aligns the individual process and the individual format to the collective formats can be found in the labeling, if you will, of the 60th gate. It says at the top, acceptance of limitation is the first step in transcendence. And the center column and the center of the center column is our direction. It is our evolutionary mutative direction as a species. It's our direction. And if you go down to the very root, if you go down to the 60th gate, if you go to the first line of the 60th gate, you get to the line of acceptance. Here and only here is the connection between the individual process and the collective process. I was mentioning this. It was a cute coffee table this morning because there was a Locke and Rubai and Viviana and myself. So the three translators and me, the four of us together. And I was talking to a Locke about how today was going to be different and that it wouldn't have the same kind of intensity. And the illustration that I gave him, because it's just what jumped into my head, but it's a good one, is that, you get your hunter-gatherer who's bored to death, freak, of course, and sitting there on the ground with a stick, and they're going like this. And all of a sudden, there's a spark. And the freak looks at the spark and says, shit! Yeah? Wow! Stands up screaming, hey! Look at this! Right? Everybody comes. Everybody comes. By the time everybody comes, the freak is off. That was it. Isn't that cool? Does nothing about it. Isn't curious about why it worked. What happened? And for the next 30 years, 24 hours a day, collective creatures are going to be at that fire, keeping it going. And the freak is running around saying, I invented fire. And the collective would like to toast him on the fire. You gave us work. You gave us burnt fingers. You gave us the need to find things to heal the burnt fingers. You made us hunt big things now so we can eat them on fire. And, goes on and on and on. And the whole thing that we have is that, this is why freaks hate institutions. When I look at the Catholic Church, because there's nothing else you can see on TV anymore. Talk about a universal church, right? You turn on every station. Al Jazeera. I couldn't believe that last night. I got so sick, I went to Al Jazeera, and they're showing pictures of this dead guy. And I think, are they ever fucked up? But think about what the institutions are. You get a freak comes along and says, oh, God is love. Isn't that great? And all you do is give work to a lot of people. The freak gets nailed, sent away, and the collective takes over. And the collective says, well, how are we going to teach them that God is... And it goes on and on and on and on. And further and further and further away, because the moment that you give it into the collective has to work its way through this long transcendence program. And of course, it wasn't easy from the beginning because you got all that tribal stuff that gets in the way. I'm a real apostate, I must say. It's so obvious to me, the limitation of what it is to be mutative. It's a deep, 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 deep limitation. It is. As a matter of fact, when the spark comes, once the spark goes, it takes all of your consciousness and the power of your consciousness not to die of melancholy. When I had my experience with the voice, when it was done, when I woke up again in this world, the idea that I was going to live longer was not interesting. It's about as close as I ever came to, not so much suicidal, because I'm not like that, it's not possible, I'm too integrative. But it was kind of like, now what's the point? Once you've been there, what's the point of being here? What's the point? It was very obvious to me. I had nothing. I was sitting there with nothing. I was just a freak. And you have all this, and then it's over. The spark is lit. And for me, it would have been very, very easy to just walk away and let the fire go out. It nearly did. I actually tried to burn everything that was given to me. It's one woman on this island who actually saved the knowledge. I tried to destroy it. And this is the whole thing about the nature of the freak, is that we tend to glorify our freaks. And we glorify them for that mutative inspiration. Very nice. Thank you very much. But the freak themselves, there's no glory in that, because you never can get it again. It's the whole thing about mutation. It's just there and then it's gone. It's like I've had that, many people have asked me that over the years. Do you regularly talk to the voice? No, I don't. And I don't want to, No, once it's there, and then it's gone. It's like what I have with music. I'm very fortunate. The muse is kind to me. There's always something creative in me, and every once in a while I sit there and I watch my fingers, and suddenly a melody emerges, and suddenly there's something to be said with that melody, and it all seems to happen very magically for me. And in that moment of it happening, I don't know anything that feels so good. I don't know anything that feels so good. It's this mutative moment, where there's just this spark, and then it's gone. And I try to recapture it, I play the song again, and it's like, no. When I play the song again, I leave the spark behind and I become the collective instrument. It's a whole different story. And the moment that I've learned that the moment that I create a piece of music, that once the music exists, the only thing that I can ever do is work on the arrangement. And you can see that this is the whole story of individual mutation. The mutation comes, but the mutation isn't the thing. The arrangement is everything. It's everything. It's the first lesson I learned with music, is that the arranger creates the sound. It's the arrangement. Look at a Catholic Church. This is not Jesus. Look at Islam. This is not Muhammad. He'd be puking. This is awful. It's not what it is. The arrangers, the arrangement, which is a collective, tribal, blah, blah, blah. But the arrangement never comes from the spark. You can't. It just doesn't. So the whole thing about looking at the mutative process is that when you're looking at the mutative process, you are not looking at a transcendence process. You're not. The goal of mutation is not to transcend, even though transcendence is always possible. See, look, the collective never has to worry about transcendence because it's always there for them. It's always there. Always. Always. Because they can work on all the sparks that have ever been around. And work on all the arrangements. And that's what they do. The individual does not have that possibility. Doesn't exist. For the individual, it is either life is going to be a flat plane or there's going to be a spike. And your whole life is live the flat plane. It's the freak's way. Most beings do not understand this. To be a mutative person is to be really flat. Flat. The way I try to describe what individual emotionality is like. Individual emotionality is so deceptive. It's so deceptive. I spent thousands of hours beside a 1222. Thousands. My old friend Jürgen. Thousands of hours in that man's aura. Thousands. You could not tell. Other than extreme situations, there was this flat wave. And every once in a while you'd have a spike. And this is the nature of what it is to be mutative. Mutation isn't this jumpy stuff. Mutative does not mean that you are fundamentally creative. Most mutative people are just depressed. You know, those of you, particularly my Viennese friends who did rave psychology with me. You know, rave psychology, you go through the gates of individuality and you have every source of melancholy. All of the melancholic problems of humanity. They're all there in that image. And that you can see that so much of us is mutative, which means so much of us is flat and melancholic and nothing's happening. You know this thing that people have about life, that it's nothing's happened, you know? This, I wish something would happen. I wish something different would happen. This is what it means to be mutative. What it means to be mutative is usually nothing happens. Nothing. I mean, nothing. The space between a note has no tonal value. Nothing. I mean, the thing that I find so interesting about mutative people is that they're zombies. It's a kind of zombieism, you know? There's this kind of... Loki and I watched the most horrendous movies together, my son. And we were watching, what was it? Resident Evil Part 2 Apocalypse. You can tell right away. And there are all these humans who have been infected with a virus that makes them zombies, right? And they're all... I mean, I've been watching zombie movies since the 50s, right? You know, zombies, you know. And then I think, zombies aren't tribal people. They aren't. Tribal people are not zombies. You can tell. You really can, right away. They're not. They're too busy. You know? Collective people are not zombies. They're trying to organize everything. You know, they don't have time to be zombies. Freaks? These are zombies. Nothing's happening, and I'm depressed. Nothing's happening, and I'm depressed. And the joke is that when something happens, they don't notice. Not self, eh? Did something happen? No. Okay, nothing's happening. I'm depressed. You know? This is not the collective process. The collective is so concerned about getting everything working. You know, the logic is working on its patterns. You've got 20, 30, 40 million people in laboratories today. You know, it used to be a joke that we talked about laboratory rats. You know? You have 40 million humans in laboratories going, let's organize, let's organize, let's organize. They're not zombies. As a matter of fact, there's something going on in their life all the time and they hate it. I mean, that's the other side of the coin. The zombie walks around saying, nothing is happening and I hate it. And I wish something would happen. And that's why you know, if you look at really messed up New Age people, they got a lot of freak in them. These are not the ones collectively or tribally who can sit back and say, you know, I don't have to have that experience. It would be nice. It would be interesting. It would be this. It would be that. But when you're dealing with the freak says, nothing's happening, you know. My whole life is about waiting for something to happen. And I know. I've been there. I spent the first 35 years of my life as a zombie, walking around saying, nothing's happening. And of course, as not self, what I would do is that I would keep on changing my life. Looking for something to happen. Wanting something to happen. Thinking that I could make things happen. And as a manifester, that is not a good thing. So it's very nice that when we start with the format and we get to the 60th gate and we look at it and we see that, you know, the acceptance of limitation leads to transcendence. This is one of the great hustle lines I ever wrote. Because that's what it is. It's sort of like, it's okay. You know? It's a long road. And of course the joke for me is that when you die, your design crystal goes flying through that gate on the way out. You know? It's like transcendence. Woohoo! You know? You just got it, you know? I mean, yeah, anyway, okay. The third gate. Because the third gate is the problem. Blaming. I'm going to blame the third gate. It's all your fault. The fundamental challenge of initiation is to transcend confusion and establish order. Now, that's wonderful, except it has to happen first. I mean, think about that. Transcendence is really not, everything about the 360 is that this is one of the great sales pitches of all time, right? You're born to transcend. Just wait. Just wait. Just wait. Just wait. Just wait. Oh, you died. You know? Sorry. Next time. And the third gate says, you know, I can handle anything. You give me something new, I'll turn it into something that is orderly and great. Now please give me something new. 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 And so what you end up is a 360 that is the pulse energy of nothing but depression. I mean, you know, in my earliest descriptions of the 360, I described it as the only potential for manic depression. Depression that literally, in the sense of, I use that language, depression that literally goes through the whole body. In other words, through the whole circuitry of what it is to be individual. That it literally infects everything. The depressed mind, the depressed body, the depressed organs, the depressed immune system, the depressed everything. And so there's this terrible pain in the mutative being. And it's this pain that there is a deep expectation within them that transcendence is there. But you see, they're not born to work at it. They're born to provide the spark every once in a while, which is very different. They can't deal with transcendence the way the collective does. They can't. As a matter of fact, they can never become transcendent. You know, it either happens or it doesn't. You know, it's a shift. It's the head going through the sky. It's one of these moments. And it's always so brief. I mean, we're very dense. You know, there's the lack of sensitivity of human beings to what is in the environment around you. You know, it was amazing for me. Last year when we were doing the encounter courses, there was a thing in the room. And it was obvious to me that there was a thing in the room. You know? But I mean, as a freak, you don't really want to go into that for too long with other people. You know? Because they sort of... He's losing it. You know? The guy's losing it. So let's cut the propaganda about the mutative force and begin to see how this format works in terms of the not-self and how that format can be something that can be healthy. It is generally not healthy. And I have my own concerns about that. My youngest son is a 360. And it's very obvious to me what the power is in that. And it's so interesting to see the way archetypes are presented to you. I mean, my children, they have all been great instructors for me. And my young one, he in the head, the ajna, and the throat, all those three centers together, he only has one gate, the 56. And here he is a 360, and he only has that 56. And this is a stimulation junkie. And you can see that his whole life is about something's got to happen. Now, he's very lucky because he's channeled creatively by his environment, by the conditioning of his environment. So he has a chance to unload this individual process. But for the vast majority of human beings who are carrying this format, it is very, very difficult for them. There is a real pain in their life They are an instrument of mutation, and yet mutation is something that's not there. I mean, that's why I talk about individuality as the uncertainty principle. You know, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, I know. And it may never come. I mean, it may never come. I see that in the way in which, you know, the response I get as a teacher over the years, the difference between collective minds, individual minds. You know, with the collective mind, when I'm dealing with logical people, they are the first people I touch. They're the first ones. The logical mind can immediately grasp the logic of the knowledge. So at least theoretically, they are beings that I can have easy access to. The abstract beings like the idea. And the moment they like the idea, I've communicated, because then they can sort of play with the idea and see how it works in experience. But the individual either knows or they don't know. I mean, individuals will trust me because I am so individual, just from the frequency. But for them, it's not like they can build an understanding of it through their collective process. There's no pattern yet to establish. There's no experience to back it up. There is simply, you're either going to know it or you don't know it. And it can be very, very difficult for individuals to get to that place, to finally know it. I mean, to know it. Because knowing has no language. It has no language. I mean, we talk about the 23rd gate as a way that the individual mind gets expressed, gets explained. But the 23rd gate is a translator. It's a translator. You know, when you're dealing with the collective movement from the ajna to the throat, you're dealing with the inner vision being translated into language. So the pattern vision being translated into logical facts, you know, the moving image being translated into ideas and stimulation out of the throat, the I believe stuff. But the 43rd gate is not an eye. And it's not the third eye. I like to call it the third ear, because that's really what it is. You know, it's like a diaphragm, and that the way in which you consciously relate to it is that it sounds like a voice, your voice, the inside voice that you're hearing with this inner ear. But taking that inner ear hearing and turn it into words in the 23rd gate, this is translation. And we all know what happens in translation. No matter how good the translator is, it's still a translation. The 23rd gate has an enormous difficulty in trying to get somebody else to know. They can explain to somebody else the parameters. You will never know, you can never know my knowing in my experience. I can do what I can to explain the parameters of my interaction. But I cannot in any way explain what that mutation was really like. I know I'm trying, because I'm trying to make a film explaining 8 days with a voice. It's very, very difficult for me to try to find language, just language, to describe phenomena. I mean, it's just difficult. You know, I don't know how to describe what appears to be 4-dimensional, multi-dimensional stimulation. I don't know how to describe that. I don't know how to describe how many of the things that I was given had nothing to do with the linear movement of information. It had nothing to do with the way I try to teach you. You know, I mean, so the whole thing about knowing is that knowing has a real problem. The only thing that knowing is really good at is knowing that nothing has happened. I mean, that's the source of their difference. I mean, the individual looks at everybody else being occupied in all this stuff, and they look at all of that and they say, oh, that's boring. Eh? We're born? That's boring. You know, we have to have parents? That's boring. Can we have something different? You know? I mean, we have to make money. Oh, that's boring. Can we do something different? You know, there is all this... I shouldn't say this, really, because I give them such a hard time. You know, the 1858. I always give the 1858 a hard time. They bitch like hell, right? They're always at your throat. You know, they're always at it. They're always criticizing. They're always challenging. To be a freak is much worse. It's much worse. Because you're always saying, nothing's happening, and all these boring people don't even notice. You know? They seem to be occupied with this nothing. And it is deeply, deep. It's not critical. It's not critical. It is... what it's really saying is, all you people don't seem to understand that if you get stuck in all this stuff that you're doing, this is a dead-end street. If nothing new happens, we're going to die as a species. New things have to come along. Mutations have to come along. Why are all you people stuck here? I mean, it's a very different... Again, knowing is something very difficult to translate. You know, the freak looks at the world around it and sees the world as being caught in a kind of morass in which they're stuck in the past. They're all locked in the past. Whether that past is yesterday or 2 seconds ago, doesn't matter. Built into the mutative being is this, where's the next thing? Where is it? And I want it. You know, the individual is interested in I. Now, I had many interesting spiritual friends on this island. And one of my earliest teachers, he said to me, you know, Ra, you say I a lot. And I didn't know then, because it was before the voice, I didn't know that I was an ego manifester who was individual. You know, I didn't know that the core of my design, in essence, is the 20th gate. I am. And I was very much an I person. You know, I will, I do, I can, I say. And this is the difficulty of the mutative being, is this I. It's the I. It's not we. It's not us. It's always I. And they are never, ever, ever satisfied when the we or the us have something that they don't. And there is an inherent dislike that the I has for the we and the us, because the I gets lost in the we and the us. And the moment it gets lost in the we and the us, it believes that nothing will ever happen. You know, this is what happens to every single person that has a lot of individuality, who ends up in a marriage when they're young, in their 20s, and ends up in their career and their jobs and their houses and whatever. And every day of their life, there's a part of them that is weeping with pain. Nothing is ever going to happen for me, other than having to cut the damn grass. You know? Nothing is ever really going to happen. Nothing. Nothing. This is what life is. And these are the people that are deeply, deeply melancholic about the nature of being. I mean, it's one of the things that you have to be able to teach individuals. You have to teach them that the magic of life is nothing happens. It's true. Nothing's ever happening. You know? I mean, when you watch the world and you watch the program turning, I mean, you know, as a freak, I'm on vacation, by the way, as I teach you, because I'm not doing my daily radio analysis of the whatever. And, you know, as a freak, when I look at the program, it's like same old, same old. You know? I mean, I have been doing these programs now since 1994. You know, the analysis of the movement. And I have these moments like when I get to the 15th of March. You know, it's the Ides. And the Ides of March always fall on the 36, the 36th gate, and it's cute, and blah, blah, blah. And every year I come to March 15th, I go, same old, same old, same old. This is the freak. The freak says, could we get a new gate just to shake things up? Maybe I start talking about, I was so happy when they found, what's her name? Oh, Jesus, I'm really going to be in trouble with her. Thank you. Sedna. Sorry. And I was like, oh, terrific. Something different. And unfortunately, it's not even for me. I mean, it's for children that aren't even born yet. It was sort of anticlimactic. It was like, all right, it's new, but it's, This is the individual. You know that from my teaching. Everybody who regularly comes to my classes knows that if the name of the course is exactly the same, the substance is different. I can't teach the same course the same way. I would go mad. I mean, that's why he does that. If you want this course, you're never going to get it again because it is just what it is and nothing else. And for me as a teacher, it was horrendous. I remember what it was like to be in, real teaching institutions where you had curriculum that was fixed and you had to teach the kids this and that. And, I was teaching them about drugs in the ancient world and how bad Rome smelt. And I was supposed to be teaching them other things. Teachers burn out, they go crazy. You have these very individual teachers who are wonderful beings, and there they are with the same curriculum over and over and over again. They start dying. I've watched them die, inside, until they're just flat. And this is what I have learned to love. The flat wave. The flat wave is really something. If you're a freak, this is the only place to be. It's wonderful. I had to come to grips with the fact that I was never, ever, ever again going to have such an experience. It's over. It was over in 1987. Over. And there's no part of me that looks for something to happen anymore. It's gone. And I remember that all the years that I was involved in drugs, I was always looking for something to happen. I mean, something different, something entertaining. I kept on going further and further and further and further to the edge for something to happen. Well, it happened. Beware of what you seek, eh? Boom! And then, so typical of a freak, I became depressed. You finally get it and you realize, oh, shit. It's over. And the whole energy of that, I'm here to be mutative, I'm here to be mutative, it's gone. It's gone. The moment that the voice left me, the only thing in front of me was the potential to be a collective salesman. Hi, guys. Teaching out of logic, organizing an organization, playing the collective game. At least I stay connected to the spark this way. It's how I see it. But the spark, the magic, I'm on this plane now. It's this sweet, sweet line that'll take me right to my death. It's just the way it is. No expectation. You got to be really lucky in a lifetime to get a spike. This is why I have such a, when I feel pain out there, it is the pain of individuality because it's in everyone. It's rare to find somebody's design that they don't have an individual gate. It's such an enormous complexity in the vehicle. And real sadness in this life does not come from the collective circuitry, does not come from tribal circuitry. It doesn't. It doesn't. As a matter of fact, if we didn't have individuality, if life was just to be the flat plane, in fact, it would be quite peaceful. And it wouldn't be depressed. It may be not self and everything that brings, but it's individuality that brings pain into our lives. And I'm not talking about the emotions now. And of course, individuality is also an emotional aspect. But I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about the sadness of every individual who does not get in their lifetime a chance to spike. Incarnation's very cruel. I mean, when I look dispassionately at the nature of the cosmic program, it's so obvious to me, with 40,000 babies dying every hour, that the incarnative process has no sympathy for us. It's not like it cares. It's not like it's a Godhead out there that's paying attention to us and says, poor humans. It's not the case. And you see, we are a mutative species. It's written in our body graph. And yet as a mutative species, we know that if you look at the history of mutation of humanity, you will see very, very clearly it's a very, very slow process with very few spikes along the way. You can go hundreds of years, thousands of years, without a mutation that transforms a particular phenomenon. You can go through many, many incarnations where nothing happens. Nothing. It's one of the things that I've always disliked about the New Age, is the promise that something will happen. It's not what it's about. You can be awake and nothing happens. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. It is. At least the cards are all laid out. I'm not Newton having to deal with Einstein. If you're Newton having to deal with Einstein, you go to bed crying every night. I don't have to deal with that. I see so much sadness because so many human beings have been pointed towards the concept that something must happen in order for their lives to be of value, to be worthy, to be this, to be that. It's not true. It's not true. Most of the time, nothing happens for all of us. It's maintenance. Consciousness is maintenance. You can see how long it takes for it to move. It takes hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years for deep concepts about the nature of being to filter through humanity. Long down the fractal lines, generation after generation. I mean, it's a simple thing. You've got Pluto in the 11th gate. You've got children being born with Pluto in the 11th gate. Pluto's going to take 265 years to come around to that gate again. Those children are going to die within 100 years. For 150 years, nothing is going to happen with the ideas that emerge out of that generation. Nothing. Lock space. Nothing. You have 150 years in which everybody is dealing with the same ideas that they were dealing with 150 years ago. That's why we're headed towards the Dark Ages. And we are headed towards a new Dark Ages. And we're going to be stuck because we're not going to have anything new to think about. No zoom, zoom, zoom to this planet and that planet. No beam me aboard Scotty. This is life. Nothing happens most of the time. I mean, a human life, we know. Look at all the lives we see. When you go back to your homes, your cities, your whatever, as you're looking out of your car while you're driving through the center, the people on the buses, the people on the trains, the people on the planes. It's not like anything's happening. It's not. It's just the wheel turning. And the great sadness of individuality is that individuality wants the wheel to stop. Stop the fucking wheel. Let's have a new game. Let's do something different. You know, many years ago, there was this comet. Everybody was nervous about this comet. And it ended up smashing into Jupiter. Very beautiful, by the way. But there were people on this island who were getting ready to die. You know? The world's coming to an end. Have you ever seen these people with these boards? They're freaks. They're hoping. No, really. Deep, deep hope. You know? Nothing's been happening, but maybe now. You know? Bring an end to the whole thing. Yeah. The collective isn't waiting for Judgment Day. Scares the piss out of the collective. You know, they say, I'm not finished with the pattern yet. You know? I haven't had enough experience. You know? The individual says, fuck them, now. You know? I want it now. Something different now. The pattern's been here forever. They're just jerking off. Everybody's gone through all these experiences. Come on, something new. And then it doesn't happen. I mean, I love these, what are they called? Jehovah's Witnesses. The first time I met a Jehovah's Witness, the world was going to end in 1984. Yeah, first time I met them. It was going to end in 1984. And I thought, okay, hey, let's see what happens, right? And then it became, 19 whatever, and then it was 2000 and something. And yeah, sure, and you got all these people saying, it's coming. You know? I love it. It's freaks. It's just freaks. I mean, you have to understand how deep the depression is in individuality, that they are ready to sacrifice every life on the planet just for the chance that something different might happen. And then you understand their condition. You know? You really begin to see that inside of all of us is this thing. To lesser or greater extents, it's in all of us. All of us can tap into that place inside of us that says, I want something to happen. It's there. And it is the source of our deepest psychological pain. Because the fact that we have mutative potential does not mean we mutate. It doesn't. It just means that we are fertile ground for the possibility, and it's really global, eh? You know, it's like thinking about the mutation in the 55th gate. I mean, it's all the 55th gates on the planet are dealing with this pressure. It's all the 39s that are involved. It's all the 49s that are part of the same codon. It's the 19 that has to deal with the shifting in the 49. It's the 59 that is having problems because of the 55. You have to see the way all these things affect each other. A deep mutation that is going on. And you see the individual within themselves who hears about the coming of rave children. Their response is, shit. I missed the boat again. You know? I mean, why couldn't I be born then? You know, so something different. You know, I could have solar plex consciousness. I missed that too. You know? The freaks, when I was doing the first mystical course, I did it in Sedona many years ago, the 6 mystical ways. I had a list of about 250 so-called holy beings, masters, gurus, saints, all kinds of beings. And about 90% of them were freaks. That is, about 90% of them had at least one channel that was individual, that was defined. And you can see what happens. There is this spark. And at the moment that there's this spark, it immediately tracks those around the fire. Immediately. I mean, it's amazing to me because I've watched my spark and what happens with this gathering around the fire. There's the spark. But what you touch the deepest is that you touch in others the potential that it can happen in them as well. And it's the first thing that I noticed about my own process was this: did it really happen to him? Could it really happen to me? You know, this is all part of this spark, and all of a sudden there are those that come, you know, and they start looking after this to try to build up a fire, to try to get the spark into others. It's amazing to watch. But of course, it can't happen to them. It's like my relationship with awakeness. I didn't have a 7-year program. I mean, I didn't. I mean, I was engineered. I mean, I don't have the same process as you. I don't know what it is to meet this knowledge in the way that you've met this knowledge, and the way you take it into your system, and the way it has to go through you for 7 years. That's not what happened to me. The spark is very different than the collective nurturing of the flame. It's different. I had to think about your process, which is not my process. I had to go away from my individuality into the collective, because you can see in the collective, this is where the transcendence is. If there's going to be transcendence for everyone, it has to take place in the collective. It's not the spark. It's how well the fire is tended. And it's so clear to me. And the fire can never be tended other than by those that are involved in the collective transcendence. So what have I taught you? Experiment and experience. Experiment and experience. I don't say support. You notice that. I'm not a fan of therapies. I'm not a fan of holding people up. I don't tell you to go the tribal way. I pull you away from me as a tribal master, guru, teacher, blah, blah, blah. I pull you always into the collective. I'm always telling you the same thing. I've been giving you this message for 18 years. Experiment and experience. Experiment and experience. This is the way collective transcendence takes place. And when the collective transcends, by the time that we get to a point where there's enough critical mass, where we have had many, many, many in the collective who have transcended, there are going to be those individuals who are born at that level of transcendence who will say, nothing's happening. It never stops. I mean, it never stops. We are driven by the mutative principle, and we all become, in one way or another, victims of that pressure. Because mutation is selective. And most mutations never take hold. I mean, you look at the New Age and how many people are standing up and saying, I got it, you know? And look at those same names 20 years later and see if they're still there. How difficult it is to take a mutation and put it into the world. And we know that. You know, it's like the appendix in the body. Now, there's been this discussion about the appendix forever now. You know, forever. As long as we've had modern understanding of it. I mean, we don't need them. It seems like we don't need them. We don't seem... I mean, I had mine taken out. You know, there's a lot of people that don't have appendix. And yet, the idea that slowly but surely... You know, that we're going to have children that are born without them because they're not necessary. Evolution says, well, is that really necessary? You know, I mean, not that I want to anthropomorphize evolution, because I don't. But I mean, the thing is that even though we can get to a point within our consciousness where we see that change would be viable, it's like, you know, the 4 small toes becoming a pad. I mean, what do we need these individual little digits for? What the hell do they do? I mean, I never quite figured that out. I mean, you could have a pad and a big toe. But we've only been walking erect for 4 million years, and we're still not very good at it. I mean, after all, the most common ailment of humanity is backaches. I mean, creatures don't normally walk this way. You're fighting against gravity. We should be down on our hands and knees, but then, of course, it would be very hard to. Nothing's happening. Gorillas have been doing that forever, right? Nothing's happening. Freaks are really cute. I think the deepest teaching in human design is the understanding of what chemistry is. I think we need to be able to get across to our students, and I'm not talking about our casual interaction with introducing design to people, but I really think that in the same way that you can only truly handle the emotional system when you accept that it is a chemistry and not a reason, the way in which it operates. And the same thing is true of what it is to be individual at any level. Because the chemistry is melancholic. Now, over the years, what I've tried to do is that I've tried to create a kind of black and white binary. Melancholy here, creativity here. And my approach has been that if you're operating correctly, then you can transform. You can transform that melancholy. And you can transform it simply by turning it into a creative process. Doesn't mean that the sadness goes away, but it means that the sadness itself can be interpreted as something beneficial. In other words, it becomes your muse. It's one of those archetypes of creativity that sadness is never very far away from the creative process. It is in the chemistry. But I want from this course, because this course for me is not just about mechanics, it's about a deeper understanding of consciousness. It's really to be able to recognize that in each and every individual, the melancholy, that chemistry of melancholy, that melancholy is the source of the potential spark itself. And because of that melancholy always carries in each and every one of us this sense that life is not worth it. This whole process, this whole business of being alive, this whole business of having to look after the fragility of being in one of these forms, dealing with our bodies and their problems, dealing with the material plane, dealing with all the things that come with being a biomechanism, and at the same time that most people are not self and are unhealthy in that process. And it's so important to see that one of the main reasons why people are not open to the truth is that they do not believe it's anything different than what they've heard before. And they don't think that it's going to change anything. They don't. They really don't. Most people that go to a reading of any kind do not expect truth, because they don't really expect the truth is around. They're ready to see that, there's a little hint of this and a little hint of that. The whole thing about the individual process is that it carries within it this, it could be better, it could be different. There's somewhere to go. There's somewhere to go. Why do you think that the moment that you release somebody from their melancholy into creativity, that something new emerges? See, the gods look after me by allowing me to filter music. Because in the filtering of music, I can assume that I'm being mutative. It's a lie, by the way, because the music's always there. And there are no new tunes. They're all old tunes, but I don't like to tell myself that, I'd like to think that I'm being, this is a new song. I love that. I really do. Eh? This is a new song. But I have thousands of songs in my head. I don't mean my own. It's very difficult for this whatever this machine is, to forget things. So I have thousands of tunes and songs and lyrics in my head. And anytime a new song comes out of me, there's always, there's that root over there, and that goes over there, and that. There are no new tunes. There is no new song. There are arrangements. Nothing but arrangements. This is the way in which we heal the spirit. No other design than individuality is so concerned about the spirit. You have the 55th gate and the 25th gate, and they are specifically about the spirit. And we have to heal the spirit of individuality. We have to. Now, one of the ways, obviously, that you do that is that if you're operating correctly, your not self is not going to take the instrument of this melancholy and turn it into all kinds of deep problems and terrible decisions. And that's what it does. I would rather deal with somebody who is not self-collective than not self-freak. Any day of the week. Even though I have a natural attunement to the individual. At least they don't have that pain in them. It's a pain. And they really don't know what to do with it. And you see, when you recognize how much individuality is in the body graph, you realize that we don't have billions of artists on this planet. We don't have billions of creative beings on this planet. It's why it's not a very creative planet. It isn't. It's not a very creative consciousness. It isn't. The first line of the third gate. It says, difficulties can only be overcome when all pertinent factors have been analyzed. It's about synthesis. Everything about an individual is that for individuality, the balance in their mundane life is more important than for anyone else. You have to see that the collective and the tribe have a natural way of finding their position in life relative to others. So the community has its built-in mechanisms. The collective has its sharing. But individuality doesn't have any of these things. When you look at your own design and you look at, let's say you just an individual gate, you have to realize that individual gate has social problems. It has social problems. And if you look at your individual gates, if you're not individually defined, you'll see that the parts of you that you really don't want to put out are individual. They draw attention, they create problems, and they remind you of something. They remind you that nothing's happening. And suddenly you feel bad about it. Nothing's happening. One of the most interesting things about the collective is that the collective says, "You're bored? Are you crazy? How can you be bored? There's so many things to do. There's so many things to see. There's so many things to... This is the collective. You're bored?" And the individual is saying, "Nothing's happening." You're bored? Look at all the things that are happening. It's all around you. This is the collective. The tribe, when the tribe looks at the collective, it thinks, look at all the shit they're busy with. The tribe says, no, you're only supposed to be busy with this. But the tribe never says nothing's happening. It just has a different priority about what's going on and what the responsibilities are. The cross. And freaks, they don't get it. They don't get it. Empowering is not even, it was one of my real concerns in the beginning when I was giving circuit keynotes. Individuals, empowerment. Zombies do not empower. I mean, they don't. If you're walking around, there's no empowerment in that. None. I mean, these are drag-ass people, you know? This is not empowerment people. You know, these are people that, you know, morosely move through their process. And the worst thing about the not-self freak, and I'm not talking about unusual configurations like mine where you have, you know, 4 or 5 channels, they're all individual and nothing else. I mean, after all, when you look at normal configurations of charts, somebody might have an individual channel, you know, mixed with other things. And it's really from this perspective that I'm really talking about. You know, even more those beings that don't have any individual definition, but just these little hanging individual gates. You know, rave psychology is about healing us through healing individuality. An individual has to be taught that the fact that nothing is happening is not bad. And the only beings that can teach that to the individual, unfortunately for individuals, is the collective. And the reason I say that is that only the collective and the individual share the mind. And the collective mind dominates the individual mind. I mean, the tribe and the individual meet in the lower half of the body. And the collective and the individual meet in the mind. You know, this is the different relationship between the mutative tribe and the mutative collective. And the collective has to say to the individual, you know, nothing happening? No, that's not true. Let me show you. And you would be wonderful at this. And you would be, and you know, it's like when my little one comes to me, very, very rare, because normally, you know, he draws a couple of hours a day, very creative design, very individual. And the other day he came to me and he said, I'm bored. And I looked at him with this collective admonishment. And I said to him, but you have so many things you can do, you know? And I instantly got the joke, and he sees me smiling, and he's not quite sure what the hell I'm smiling at. But it was so funny for me. It's like, but there's all these things for you to do. It's okay that nothing right now is happening. You know, it's like the life of an artist. I love to make music, but I can never sit down until I sit down. You know, the keyboard sits in my room, and sometimes I look at it and I think, why don't you call me now? You know, it's like, it would be really nice to go over there and something will happen, and, you know, and it doesn't. And it doesn't. And this is the whole thing that you learn as an artist. You learn to say, okay, no muse today, you know, and instead of saying no muse will ever come, you get into planing. You know, and you get to see that on the plane, that life can be rich. It can be rich because you can put into life creative intent. And this is the whole thing about individuality. You know, the description I gave you the other day about my strange experience in a kitchen, you know, cleaning everything up as a freak. But really, this is one of the things where the whole perception of the beauty of life can be opened up for the individual when they see that every aspect of life has a creative potential. Most individuals, being creative by nature, that the conditioning is that you're only creative if you're a star. You know, so if you like music, you want to be a rock star. If you like to draw, you want to be Picasso. And if you can't be Picasso, nothing's happening, you know? And then there's this sadness that you don't even enjoy the gift anymore because the gods haven't shined on you. I have had so many musician friends in my life, talented beings, who never made it. And they all carry the same pissed off, nasty edge to them. Never happened for me, you know. And they lose their love of their art. They do. Because built into every individual is this, it could happen. Spike, you know. It could happen to me, you know. It could happen just like that. And I mean, the moment that the individual actually thinks in any way that it's actually going to happen, oh, what the gods do to these beings, eh? The program controls individuality with an iron fist. Iron. I mean, the program is very gentle with the tribe. Very gentle with the tribe. It's always massaging the tribe because the tribe keeps having babies. Good. 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 Yeah, you're a little sick, but it's okay. Good. Good. You know? I mean, you got funny rituals, but it's okay. Good. You know? And the program looks at the collective and says, don't get too smart. Just don't get too smart. You know, don't think you can take over. But individuality, you know, it's like the person who wants to give you a massage and they're going to use their elbow. You know? Hmm? You wait for mutation. You wait for mutation. And you see, mutation has to be kept fertile and ready at any moment. At any moment. So there's this enormous pressure on humanity to mutate, and yet, you know, out of the 6 billion people on this planet, you're going to have, you know, 5,999.9 million going, nothing's happening, in every cycle. I mean, you can go through some epochs, I can see it in global cycles, where for hundreds of years, nothing happens. And yet the fire has to be kept burning. And all that potential for sparking has to be kept nourished and healthy. You know, if you want to see the deep psychological dilemma in humanity, there's only one place to go. You go to this circuitry. This is where it is. And you see, to operate correctly as a freak, to operate correctly with individuality, is not so much that intellectually you can say, all right, I'm going to accept that nothing may happen. You know, it's one of my things of, I never asked why. You know, that's not me. When I disappeared out of my Western life, when I abandoned family and child and friends and business and just went off into the world, I never said, why are you doing this? I never asked myself that question. When I ended up living in a tree, I never said to myself, you know, why are you doing this? You know? When the voice came and gave me this knowledge, I never said, why did you pick me? And it's one of the things to understand about the nature of the deepest encounters. They don't come when you're waiting for it, looking for it, wanting it, yearning it, needing it. It doesn't come. And if it does come, it's only coming to punish you, so that you end up mad, or you end up dead, or you end up crazy. This is what individuality has to understand. And I say understand as a keynote. They cannot know that. They have to be taught that. And it's not easy to teach individuals anything. They don't like to listen. They're not good at hearing you, the collective, the tribe, whatever. It's why we've got to start when they're young. In a sense, every aspect of individuality is linked to the generative process. It's one of the things that I learned in my whole exploration that I've been through from my own intellectual perspective about what it is to be a generator and how generators truly generate the world that we live in. How those of us who are not generators are always tapping into that life force, otherwise there is no life. And that just as the generator is able to establish the work pattern, whether as slave or builder, and mostly slave, that it is the non-sacral beings that are the ones who work on the quality of life. And it is this relationship between the quality of life and work that gives us this dimension of the life force that we're all a part of. But for the individual, for the creative mutative process, it's very difficult, for example, for me as a manifester to have learnt this in my life. It took me a very long time. I would try to force creativity out of me. Force it out of me. I'm a manifester, ego manifester. I'm going to be creative, and I'm going to be creative now. And then, nothing's happening. Because the whole thing about being mutative is that it's a response. It's a response. My mutative potential responded to my encounter. I didn't call it or I didn't know where it was. And that the same thing is true for the muse. The same thing is true in my teaching you. My creativity is just, it seems to be responding to the program. As a matter of fact, it responds to who's in the room and what the general aura is, and what the configuration is, and what the program is. I'll finish a day and someone will say to me, "Oh, that was really great today." I have no idea. I don't. I really don't. Everything about the individual process is, to find descriptions that work. If you're not living who you are, it's very difficult to have a rewarding life. It's just difficult. And the demands of a rewarding life when you have individuality are even more. See, the collective is rewarded by being able to have reliable patterns and a good collection of experience. It makes life worthwhile. If you're a tribal being and you have the privilege of family and children and all of that, it makes life worthwhile. You can always say, this is life. This is what it is. But for the individual, that is not something that's there for them. Any aspect of individuality is willing to accept what is only an expectation that it will change, not an expectation that it's going to remain the same. I will accept this life for what it is. I will continue to go along my planing line. And that's it. And it's one of the things that we need to instill in everyone. It's not about the big events. It's not about these horrible pitchings of freaks. It's freaks that were responsible for this shit. They're the ones that sell you the propaganda that you can wake up like this and you can have this Satori experience and your whole world will change overnight. It's not true. It may be true for them, but for everybody else it's quite a process. And for most beings who don't have the benefit and the privilege of this knowledge, there's no mechanical route to even get there. And unless human beings understand that it's being here now for whatever it's worth, for whatever it is, this is all there is. There isn't anything else. And it's only when the individual spirit can truly accept its limitation. Remember, that's where we started, the 60th gate, the first line. Transcendence can only begin once one has accepted one's limitation. I've accepted the limitation that I will never have such an experience again. It's gone. And it's part of my collective transcendence, not my freaky transcendence. I didn't need a mirror for my awakeness when I was alone with the voice. I was there. The rest of it now is just a collective process. It's a collective transcendence. It's about my part in that collective instrument. It's how far I can go in developing my logical skills and how far my allies can go in developing the experiential train of followers, students, friends who go down the path. And now it's all collective. And now I'm Newton. I am. It's like, okay, here's the plan. There it is. Here's the physics. Now I know 1,300 and several years from now, that'll all be erased. It's over. I won't be alive. It's really nice. I don't have to confront the end of it. I can sit back and say, well, we're going to plane this way till the end of time. So everybody's got to get into the transcendence business. This is the end. I sound like I'm doing a Doors rendition, but this is the end. This is the end. I am the end. This is the end of the story. So you have all this transcendence, and I have to be able to go around and tell all these individuals, hey, look, nothing's going to happen. Not for us humans. I don't know what's going to happen for the rave children. They have another process. But for us humans with individual activation, there's only one way now. And there's only one way. You live correctly as yourself. And in living correctly as yourself, you'll get to see that your mutative creative impulse can go into your life. It can go into your love. It can go into your art. It can go into your being. We need to get rid of this deep, deep malaise, this expectation. It's like with design. You all know that. When you start your process and you think about 7 years, by the time you get to the 3rd year, you already realize what's going on. It's a process. It's a process. And it reveals itself in its own time, in its own way. It just does. The whole business of transcendence is that if you're not really here in the detail of your process, and again, using very logical language, the detail of your process, if you're not here in that, you miss it. This is where the magic is for us. Our unique individual little universes where we can be perfect within that context. And the whole creative direction of humanity has to go towards the perfection of what they are rather than the dream of what they can be. Because the dream's always been a lie because they've never known. They've never known. So first let them see that there is a deep mutation for them. It's cosmetic, we know, but still, it's a deep mutation. To finally get to the point of accepting your limitation. We all have a design, and we all have a design in time. And there's nothing we can do about that. Nothing, nothing, nothing. We are here to accept our design in time and to live it fully, as deeply as we can. That's its magic. And without sadness, without pain. And you will see that humanity is going to be filled with more and more pain as we move deeper and deeper into this century. Because our species is beginning to die out. And there isn't anything that's going to save it. And deep within our psyche, we all know that in one way or another. We know that from the day that God is Dead was on the cover of Time magazine in 1959. We all know that somewhere. We all know that with mutual assured destruction of billions of tons of TNT sitting on top of thermonuclear devices on missiles all over this planet. It's deep inside of us that there is an end. It's in our theologies and in our philosophies. It's all there. And one of the things about, I'm going to be starting a program in September where I'm really going to focus on the development of rave psychology as a necessary tool for the future. I think that all humans are going to need therapy as we move further and further into this century. Literally. You know, I think this understanding, a deep understanding, that there is a dullness to the spark. We're sparking down. It's like the diminishment in the average sperm count of males over the last 50 years. We are sparking down. And the collective fire keepers, those that are going to stand around and keep the fires burning, well, it's easy to see that in an age where we live in a global cycle that includes the 40-37, and it's been there since 1610. But oh boy, is that ever going away. And we're going to be in a world of the individual. We're going to wake up to an epoch in which the global theme is going to be, there's nothing happening.